Okay. Can everyone hear me in the back? Perfect. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome, everybody. Today, I hope you're all here because you're interested in Salesforce IoT, because that is all we're going to talk about for the next 40 minutes. This is Michelle. Michelle and I are product managers on Salesforce IoT Explorer. We're on the app team. So we've been working on a lot of the features that you'll see today. And on the last two releases, thanks everybody for coming. And in the next two releases, we're also working on a lot of really cool customer success features that will make using the product a lot better for everybody who uses it, which I'm guessing is everybody here. So let's go back. This is great. Thank you all for coming here. We're super excited to sort of show off and be the ones to get to show off to you all the new and interesting stuff in our product. Today, I think we've got some new things on top of what you might have seen at Dreamforce if you came to our talk at Dreamforce. So we're super excited about that. And so I've done this already. I'm switching up the order today. So why are we all here? So let's just all level set. We're all here because we are super excited, fabulously excited to bring our organizations into the fourth industrial revolution and into the age of the Trailblazer using Michelle and my product. That's Salesforce IoT. And so to keep things fun, rather than sort of doing a lecture, what we're going to do today is we're going to sort of put ourselves in the shoes of a fellow Trailblazer, Thomas the Trailblazer, and we're going to work through a use case that he has for his sort of imaginary company called Caravans Are Us, because we're going along with the TDX theme, which is a safari. And so we're going to talk to you today about Caravans Are Us and Thomas's role as a Salesforce administrator who is responsible for using Salesforce IoT Explorer to sort of power Caravans Are Us. And so what Caravans Are Us is they're sort of a caravan company that you go to them and you say, give me this caravan for the next 2 days, I'm going to take it on the safari, and then that's it. And what they want to do is they really want to morph their business into a more caravan as a service model, like CAAS, where not just do you sort of rent the caravan from them, but they also monitor the caravan while you're out, and they will sort of fix, thanks a lot. Hello? And so they'll proactively monitor the status of the caravans while they're out there. What are the temperatures, what are the engine levels, and use Salesforce IoT to proactively sort of reach out to customers and take care of them before the customer finds out that something is wrong and spends 6 hours on the phone trying to talk to a customer service representative to get unstuck. And so that's sort of the use case, and we'll flesh it out in more detail as we go through the presentation. But that is the hat that we're all going to wear today. So to kick it all off, we're going to start with the menu, and Michelle will take over.
All right, so the first thing that we're going to start talking about is some high-level concepts that are necessary for you as you embark on your IoT journey. We'll just get you oriented to the use case, get you oriented to the IoT product, and really how that product sits in the IoT marketplace. Then we are going to jump right into hands-on configuration of Salesforce IoT. We'll take you from beginning to end, everything you need to do in Salesforce to set up your very first use case. And from that point, you'd be able to go spin up a developer and do this yourself. So the first thing we'll configure there is platform events. We'll give a brief overview for anyone who's unfamiliar, and then we'll get into the IoT side of things. So there's two IoT objects we will configure. One is called a context, one is called an orchestration. We'll lead you through those steps, teach you everything you need to know along the way, and then finally we'll use whatever remaining time we have to jump into the public APIs that are available with IoT that you can feel free to use to become a power user and sort of add to your organization's ability to quickly innovate with IoT. So I think we'll go ahead and get started with a little bit of an overview. So these high-level concepts about IoT and how our product fits into the overall marketplace. I think a lot of people, honestly, their first question about IoT is, what exactly is IoT? Is it just devices? Do I have to do something with the data? IoT really represents an entire ecosystem. Certainly, you need to have those IoT-connected devices to be able to build an IoT solution. Something needs to be sending in a steady stream of data. But that's only one very small component of what creates a successful IoT implementation. So some of the other components our customers usually work through are finding a connectivity solution. How does that data make it from a device to a platform that can actually do something special with it? And they usually work with partners such as AWS or Google Cloud Platform, are two companies we work with frequently, and they actually build those IoT platforms. They often have device management capabilities, which allow you to sort of your devices, perhaps push firmware updates, and make sure that everything is authorized correctly. And then IoT from Salesforce really sits at the end of this. There's this whole infrastructure play that you've done before this. You've invested a lot of money into IoT, but let's be honest, if you're just pumping to a data lake, you're not getting any value from that, right? Your customers don't care if you're storing their data somewhere. They actually probably don't like that if they're not seeing anything from it. So you need to develop some sort of business application on top of that IoT platform that actually drives values for your customers. And that's where Salesforce IoT comes in, is really providing that area that allows you to monetize the existing investment that you've already made in IoT. And we do this in a way that's very easy to iterate through. You'll see today how quickly it is to get things set up for a very simple use case. And then you can imagine that going forward, it's very easy to iterate and sort of put together different versions of that. All right. So in terms of what IoT from Salesforce actually entails, there's a couple key pieces. Number one, we need to get this data from somewhere. So we use platform events for that. We'll go into more detail about that in a bit. Two, we're going to take that event data and combine it with all the existing data that you have in Salesforce. So we want you to be able to leverage everything else that you're storing in Salesforce. Do you use cases? Have you created custom objects to represent those assets that you've sold to your customers? You'll be able to leverage those in IoT and take advantage of the wealth of knowledge that you've already built about your customers. And that's really a lot of the strength of IoT, is having all of that knowledge at your fingertips and being able to pair that information to streaming data. Finally, there's this business logic, rules engine, and outputs aspect. So this is how you really take that action that provides the value to your customers. Are you going to be doing a proactive service case where you perhaps say, hey, the Caravan engine's getting a little hot. Maybe we should do something before it gets way too hot out in the middle of the savannah? Are you going to be doing proactive marketing or proactive sales where you say, this person, seems to be coming in maybe, every year on a safari. Let's make sure that we try to upsell them to the higher upgraded model next time. Or do you want to, perhaps entice them to get a better service contract? So those are where a lot of these use cases come together, is how you take actions with IoT. So I think that it's time to start a little bit of training, perhaps. Maybe, Thomas, you would like to learn a little bit about platform events.
I'm happy to. Why don't you give me an overview?
Absolutely. So again, platform events are how we get data into Salesforce IoT. How many of you guys have actually used platform events before? Okay, a couple hands. So this is definitely a lot more than when we did this talk at Dreamforce last year. It's a newer technology from Salesforce, but it's a general purpose message bus. So you send events into Salesforce. Any product from Salesforce or anything you write even custom can consume those platform events. So what does that mean? That means if you already have a platform event configured, you can use it for IoT. That means if you make a platform event for IoT, you can use it for other products too. So platform events are just a really flexible publish-subscribe architecture. It is a push mechanism, so if you are using AWS, for instance, as a partner, you will need to post events into IoT. Most of our customers will use AWS. They just write a Lambda function that does that post operation, but it's really simple to set up. And there's public APIs, everything's fully documented, super easy to use. And we actually have another session about this tomorrow, some advanced operations you can do with Apex to get more value from your platform events. So that'll be in the Meadow Theater tomorrow. Feel free to stop by. It's just a little 20-minute one. There's also a lovely trailhead about platform events if you want to get more hands-on, get some nice badges, and do a little bit of hands-on training. So feel free to take a whack at that too. But for now, I think let's just do it hands-on and learn by doing.
So you're telling me, let me make sure I got this right. You're telling me that if I want to get data into Salesforce IoT, it's the same way that I get event data into Salesforce Platform. So if I already have that working, I don't have to do anything for IoT.
Exactly. Then you would be ready to go.
That is too easy.
But we're going to assume that everyone's starting from scratch, so we're going to give you the real end-to-end. So let's go ahead and switch into Salesforce. And the first thing we're going to do is go into setup. So everything that you're going to do with Salesforce IoT lives in the setup part of Salesforce. The first thing we want to do is search for platform events. And that is where we're going to create a new platform event. And this is just going to be the standard UI that you're used to. So go ahead and click. Do you want me to hold that for you? OK. So go ahead and click, type in the name of your platform event. So you're monitoring caravans, right? So this is Thomas right now. So Thomas, you are monitoring caravans. And what are you specifically monitoring about the caravan?
The temperature.
All right, so let's go ahead and actually configure a platform event that's related just to temperature. We'll keep things really simple. You'll see how easy it is to add on. You can always change this stuff later. And we're going to go ahead and save that. And the next thing we need to do is actually add fields to the platform event. So this is basically just an empty object right now. We need to add fields for every piece of data that we want to send in. So let's go ahead and add a field that actually keeps that temperature value. Let's start with that, since that seems like an obvious one.
So temperatures, now that I scratch my head and I think about it, temperatures are numbers. That is so intuitive. Ooh, nice. And so I would probably call this the temp. Oh, okay.
And then we just have to assign correct length. Again, just standard setup. Nothing particularly fancy here. So if you've never used platform events, it's nothing hard. You can learn it right away. There's one more field that I need you to add. So let's think about the number of caravans that your company is currently monitoring. How many are there, would you say?
More than 6,000.
More than 6,000. So that's a whole lot of caravans. We need a way to be able to distinguish which events came from which caravans, right? We can't just have a steady flood of events coming in and not know which caravan is burning, right? Knowing that one of them has an engine that's not going so well doesn't really help us locate that caravan and fix the problem. We can just sort of blow up a heat map. It's not going to be too good. So is there any sort of identifying information about your caravans, maybe?
Yeah, let me take a look at my caravans list, which happens to be frequently or in my first tab. Very nice. So I have an ID here that uniquely identifies every caravan record. I think many objects in Salesforce implementations probably have something similar. So maybe I can just use that. Do you think that's a good idea?
I think that that's a great idea. So you'll probably want to identify some serial number, perhaps a part number, any sort of unique information. And what you'll do is have those events that you send in to IoT contain that piece of data. So we have ID and make that a required field. Perfect.
Because every caravan needs to have an ID.
Every caravan does need to have an ID, again. Otherwise, we won't know which one is sending the event. All right, so this is pretty much set up. Do you feel ready to move to the next step, or is there anything else you want to do?
So that felt a little too easy, honestly. Maybe it's because of Salesforce Lightning design system just being so easy to use. But I want to make sure that this thing actually was set up correctly by me. Can I do that somehow?
Absolutely. So what we'll do is we'll use Workbench to just show you how to post a very simple platform event. And we will test it out.
I happen to have Workbench open as well. That is so convenient.
All right, so I'm going to take this so that you can type more easily. So what you want to do is just put in the API name of the platform event after S-objects. And then it needs to be a post, which we've already selected. And the fields that you put in are, of course, in the body. Oh, sorry, we had a very long name for this platform event, so copy-paste is definitely going to be the correct solution. Great. And then the two fields we need to put in are that ID field and temp field, I believe, are what we called them, right?
Let's take a look.
So use the API name for all of this stuff whenever you're using Workbench, just sort of standard practice. And do you happen to remember any? Go ahead and put the temp in first, and then we'll make sure that we have an ID of something that actually exists. So what's a normal temperature of an engine?
75.
All right, we'll use 75 to start with. And now, do you happen to remember, we were looking at the list of caravans, any of the IDs that might be good to use for an event?
I do. Here's one.
All right, so let's go ahead and put that
These are all
one
easy
in.
numbers to remember. There's one. Excellent. Because I just opened a case for this one yesterday, so.
So you
happy to
remembered
know,
it because
yes.
of that?
Yes.
All right, let's go ahead and execute
Totally.
that and see if it ends up working. All right, so when you see in the sort of second line there, it says success is true. That means that the platform event was successfully submitted. We haven't configured any consumers on this platform event yet, so we wouldn't expect anything to happen downstream. And I think that's the next step. So if you don't mind, I feel like I've done a lot of talking, and I think I want you to teach me how to use IoT now.
Excellent, because I happen to be a topic expert on context and orchestration
Now, I will say,
in the world of IoT.
Wonderful. So as I take on the role of Thomas, I'm a Thomas who likes to ask a lot of questions. One of the questions that I have is, we only put like 2 fields on that platform event, but to make the correct sort of decision about how to service the caravan, I need a lot more information. So we're actually only doing automatic service for caravans that are attached to counts that have the premier support status of Mithril. So is that information I need to put on the event, or how is IoT supposed to know that?
But let's step back. It sounds like you just said a use case right there. Mm-hmm. Tell me your use case. Let's just put it out there again.
Definitely. So I'm doing proactive service of caravans. If the temperature goes above, let's say, 175 degrees, I want to be able to automatically create a case, but only if the caravan is owned by an account that has our premier service tier. Otherwise, it would be good to track that the caravan's not going too well, but like, I don't want a service when people aren't paying for it.
Yes, I know that feeling very well. So, okay, so this is where we have now set up a platform event. This was all on Enterprise Messaging Platform, which is a shared service across Salesforce platform. So this is where we start diving into the Salesforce IoT product itself. And this is what we call context. Now we're sending event data into Salesforce. We have to configure Salesforce IoT to start listening to that data and to start bringing it and marrying it and enriching it with the core platform data that you have inside of Salesforce, the world's #1 customer success platform. And so what I mean by that is we set up our platform event to send in 2 pieces of information, the ID of the caravan as well as the temperature reading for that caravan. I also need to know, if I want to power up that use case, I need to know to what account did I lease this caravan and what is their premium status. That's stuff that is inside of Salesforce Core. And so this is the stuff that I need to tell IoT associate with the event data that I'm coming in. So if we can switch back to the app now, and we type in the search, we're going to type in context because we're creating a context for IoT to think about. Let's go ahead and click context, Salesforce IoT context, and create a new context. And so what do you think is a good name for a context for the use case that you're trying to drive?
So I'm doing temperature monitoring, and I guess it's really focused on these temperature readings, so I'll call it caravan temp.
Mm-hmm. All right. What does this look like to you?
So
what's clickable?
It looks like I can click the edit to basically, I guess, add various events and something called reference data. So what is this reference data?
So reference data is the data that is inside of Salesforce Core that you want to refer to whenever an event comes into Salesforce IoT and you want to process it. It's sort of like saying import blank when you have like a Python script or something, right? It's bringing in the relevant information. So the first thing we want to do is we just created an event. And so we want to tell this context, hey, Salesforce IoT context, subscribe to this event, listen to this event, pull it into the world of IoT.
All right, so I can see the event that we just created. I'm going to go ahead and select that, and I'll click Next. So on the screen, there's only one option. I could just blindly select it, but I think I actually kind of want to learn so that I can iterate later. Can you explain what this choose a key modal means?
Yes, and the key is a great word because this key is very important. Sometimes I tell people it's the key to success. So what a key does is you have a bunch of events coming in, right? We're not just tracking one caravan. We're having all of our caravans either sending event data into a single endpoint, or we're having them send data into AWS and having a connector in AWS pump all of this event data from different caravans with different IDs into a single endpoint. And so what the key does is the key says, okay, an event came in, extract from that event this particular field, which I call the key field, and then look up a record that has a same value. So if you look at this visual here, right, we have a list view of all the caravans that are currently in my implementation with the caravan ID. And so I'm telling Salesforce IoT, when an event comes in, extract the caravan ID out of that event, look for the caravan with a matching ID, and that's how I create that relationship between an inbound event, which I have no idea about. It just came in, it got submitted to the REST endpoint. How can I create that relationship and that lookup, essentially? Lookup between an event and an asset record. And that's even more powerful because not only then, now I'm inside of the ecosystem, right? And so the next thing I can do is I can then traverse the model. I can find the caravan for the event that came in. Then I can look at the caravan, I can find what is the account that caravan belongs to. And for that account, what is the premium status? And this is how we light up the use case. We say, okay, send us the event data only, then use the data that's inside of Salesforce CRM platform to enrich the event data with the customer data, the contextual data, and that's why we call it a context. So let's go back to the app. All right. Well, there's only one choice here, but this is the thing that was like the 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, which is the ID for the caravan that's being sent in the event. The other thing we want to do now is tell Salesforce IoT, associate that event data with a particular type of Salesforce object. In this case, what is it going to be?
It's going to be that caravan custom object that I've created.
Exactly.
All right. And then the identifier on the caravan object, we said, if I check over here, it's this caravan ID field. So that is the one that I want to select to match up with the keys coming in from the events. All right, so I'll go ahead and save that. And this looks good. So I can click in, sort of verify that everything looks correct. I can see that my key is set to the ID. I can see that this key is set to the ID. So I think everything's matched up correctly. And you basically said that I'll be able to traverse through this account, which is the first field after the key, that I'll be able to use that relationship to be able to understand more about the support status of my various accounts.
Exactly. Are you excited?
I'm really excited. I'm ready to
Okay.
get my hands on and really go and program the business logic of this now.
I love it. Okay, let's switch back to the presentation so that I can catch the presentation up, because I think we moved a slide or two. Okay, let's jump into orchestrations now. So now we've told Salesforce IoT, bring this event data in and marry it with this context data, enrich it with this context data. So now we have a sort of a 360-degree view of the event and the customer behind the event, like the customer who has that device. And so now we actually have to do something with it, and that's what we call the orchestration. This is where sort of the sausage is made in IoT, or as I like to say, where the soup is poured. Anyways, so yeah, that's that. Okay, so orchestrations is where you write this business logic, you write it in terms of like declarative rules, and then you take actions. And what I mean by that is, if you use Service Cloud, if you're in manufacturing, you probably have Service Cloud and maybe Field Service Lightning. And those things run off of cases, those things run off of work orders. And so what you use Salesforce IoT to do is you have all the devices send their data into Salesforce IoT and write automated logic that sort of proactively listens to that data, triggers off of it, and creates and exposes cases with the useful information from the data inside of Service Cloud, inside of Field Service. If you have Sales Cloud, I think you can create an opportunity, for example. And so that's what we mean by output, right? You have to do something with this product, otherwise it's just sort of processing. So let's jump back into the app. Go back into the setup menu and search for orchestrations. All right, what do you see here?
So it looks like I can create a new orchestration, and it sounds like that's where I do all the stuff that's really interesting to my customers. So I think I want to click that button and get started.
Okay.
So I'll give it a name. I guess this one is temperature monitoring, so I'll call it Caravan Temp Monitoring. And I need to attach it to a context. So I guess this is basically saying what data is available to the orchestration.
Exactly, because you might have different use cases in your org, right? You might have something that tracks caravans. You might have something else that tracks different devices. And so each context sort of sets the tone. What is the event that I'm listening to, and what is the data that I want in Salesforce CRM that is relevant to this event? And so you might have different branches, right? Manufacturing branch, service branch, sales branch. They might have different contexts.
Exactly.
So,
we have a hot air balloon division, and they've already got their hands on IoT, and I'm a little bit competitive with their admin, so I really want to catch up and get up to there. But I don't care about hot air balloon events when I'm trying to monitor caravans, right? So
Exactly.
it wouldn't make sense for me to also consume those events.
right.
All right, so I'll go ahead and create this. Now, I'm a visual learner, and I'm kind of not sure how to go about doing whatever is on this page, so can you sort of guide me along and show me how to get started?
I too am a visual learner. And so when I like to design my orchestrations, I like to do it visually. And so if you click on the States tab over there, now we have visuals. What do you see right now?
So there's one thing, which I guess is a state, since I'm in the States tab, but I don't really know what a state is. So if you could explain that to me, that would be really helpful.
Right, and so Salesforce IoT uses state machines to model the world and to model devices. Like a device can be in many states in real life, and so we want to sort of have a virtual representation of that device and or the status of the customer relationship that you have. And so to give you an example, we might have something like, I'm not going to spoil it for the caravan case, you have to figure that out on yourself. But for example, I think we might have elevator service, right? And so we could have states that say the elevator is broken or the elevator is good. Or we could take it a step further and also bring in the state of where that elevator is in Salesforce. What I mean by that is not only is the elevator broken, but a case has been opened for it and a field service agent has been dispatched, right? And so these are all different sort of states. And so what we tell Salesforce IoT is what are the interesting states for me that I can use to drive the outcomes that I want for my scenario? And then I can tell Salesforce IoT, based on the events that come in, if I'm in a certain state, what does it take to move that state? If I'm in a good state for an engine, an event comes in, what is the logic that Salesforce IoT should execute to switch the update that state from a bad state to a good state or a good state to an overheated state? So what are the states that are interesting to your use case?
Well, there's sort of like a normal or default state. I guess I can just leave it as that. But then I also need to add another state, which is what I'm monitoring for, which is when it gets way too hot. So I'll go ahead and call this one hot, 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 and I'll add that guy in.
Okay.
Now, I guess I need to have some way for things to move between the states if we're configuring a state machine. So there's a transitions button. Is that what I use?
Yes, indeed.
All right, so I'll go ahead and add some transitions. I obviously know that a normal engine can end up going into an overheated condition, so I will add that in. And I also know that obviously the point is to get a service technician out to the caravan and fix the engine. So I know that I want to be able to have the engines go from overheated back into this normal state. So I will add that in too. This looks good to go then.
Right, and so you basically told Salesforce, hey, I'm tracking caravan right now because I'm keeping it simple. Like there's 2 states that I want you to track.
Yeah.
And this is how I want you to get in between them.
Now, does IoT just magically know that some temperatures are bad and some temperatures are good, or how do I configure that logic?
Maybe one day. But for now, you have to tell it what is the rules that I want you to process when an event comes in that tells Salesforce IT, hey, this caravan was in a good state, but it's no longer in one. Update what you think about this caravan, and that's what these rules are.
So it looks like it filled in that new state that I created, and it also added in the transition. And the rest of it is this area that I still need to go ahead and fill in. So can I just go ahead and sort of try, see what happens?
Yeah.
All right. So I want to be able to act on an event. So I'm acting on events every time that I get a caravan reading in. I want to check, is it too hot? Okay, so and I also have access to the caravan object too, which is interesting. Okay, so I'm going to check this temperature. I'm going to say whether it is higher than, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll just do 175 to start with. Yeah, I'm trying to do Fahrenheit, but I don't actually know at what point an engine overheats. So does anyone have experience with car or caravan engines and happen to know?
Caravan world, we have our own
This is an
degree C.
opportunity for audience participation. 250-ish. Okay, we'll go with 250. Just to show you that it's not hard-coded now. But okay, and then we'll also go ahead and I guess do the same thing over here. So this one will say anytime that the temperature reading .temp is less than or equal to. Okay. So that's great. I mean, that's basically like IoT being able to show me, I guess, like which caravans are good and which caravans are bad. But like, I also kind of want to do something, right? I want to create a case. So I see this thing called add in action. Where exactly should I do that? Because I remember that I only want to do these cases if there's certain, like a certain premier status, right?
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's so right now, let's step into the caravan's frame of mind, right? So for those of you who are unfamiliar with our product, I think this might just have seemed like magic. And so what just happened here? Remember, we created a context where we have events coming in. And so when we populated that when dropdown, it's basically saying what event comes in, right? And so the events in your context. We only have one event coming into our context. In the condition column, now we have a context, we have events. And so we have the fields on that event, as well as the fields on the records, which you'll see later. And so we're able to grab that metadata about the event, caravan temperature reading.temp. Okay, that was a bad name for the event, but basically we can grab the values inside of that event, right? And so right now, what this is reading is if the engine is in a good state, then when the reading comes in, if the reading is greater than 250, it's no longer in a good state. So make that transition to the bad state. Similarly, if I'm in the bad state, but I get news that the temperature is less than 250, then it is not an accurate representation of the caravan anymore. And so I want to translate back. So you can sort of think about it like if-then statements.
Yeah, so basically you're telling me that this entire state acts as an initial if. So if my caravan is currently okay, it's not even going to check this condition, right? It's only going to check the conditions that are set to evaluate when the caravan is doing well.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that is the state machine. And you're telling me because you wrote this. Okay, so the final thing we want to do is we want to actually make an output in the system because right now, Salesforce IoT will just be processing and not creating anything. So it's like not that useful, right? And so what we actually want to do is power up that use case that you mentioned earlier about what? Creating a case when the account to which the caravan belongs
Let me go ahead and do this
has
first.
like premium status or something like that, right?
Yeah, so I want to check, I want to do an and. I'll just do it this way, I guess. So I'll check caravan.temp. I'll say if it's greater than 250. And, okay, so the status is on the account object, which is tied to the caravan object. So rather than going into my event, because I don't have any fields on the event that are tied to the stats, which is actually really great. So I don't know if you guys know, but like the internet connectivity is not so great out in the savannah. And it's really expensive to purchase a bunch of bandwidth for cell phones to basically have these, these little signals going back and forth. So I like that the events are really small. I like that I don't have to spend a whole bunch of money sending the same sort of like customer status every single time. But I need to be able to access it here. So do I do that from the caravan object itself?
Exactly. So not only is the event in the context, but we also added the caravan record to the context. And so you have access to that S object inside of your rules. And the other thing is, like, the caravan wouldn't even know to which account it belongs necessarily, right? If you're just getting readings from a temperature sensor, you're getting like readings. You're not getting Salesforce CRM data. And so that's why you need to join it here in IoT.
All right, and the highest level of support that we're creating this service for is Mithril. So I basically said if the temperature is greater than that 250, so when I thought the caravan was good, if in fact the temperature rises above 250 and the customer has this Mithril status, what I'm gonna do is create a case, and it looks like I can do Salesforce. Wow, so I can do pretty much everything to a Salesforce record here, huh?
Yes.
And I'll select a case, I'll do create. So I'll just put in a couple fields, I guess, to sort of make sure that I'm getting something populated. I just want to test that it works. I'll just give it a subject for now. So we'll say IoT created overheating engine. Okay. So we'll just do that for now and sort of check that that works. And I guess I can give it a name. Okay. So we'll say it's create case.
So we're just keeping it a very bare bones case right now with just a subject. But just like you use these lookups, right, inside of these formulas, you can also use those in the fields of the output action. So you can say caravan plus caravan c.id or whatever is broken. And then when the case is created, it'll say caravan 2357111137019 was
So I could do like
broken,
string
right?
concatenation to make sure that all the relevant information is in the case.
Yeah.
All right, so let me read this back to you. If I'm in this sort of default happy state and I get an event, so let's say if the caravan, right, so for one particular caravan, that caravan is in the default happy state and it sends an event into IoT.
Right.
I'm going to check whether the temperature is elevated and it has a really high premier service status. In that case, I will go create a case, and then I'm going to immediately transition into the next state. So it'll basically evaluate these two rules in order, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then, so basically it transitions into this other state. The next time I get an event in that state and the reading has gone back below 250, then I will transition back into the happy default state.
Superb intuition.
Okay, so to get this started, I'm guessing that I do save and activate since these are prominent buttons. And how do I actually observe whether IoT is working? I mean, I guess I can like check the case creation, but is there anything in IoT I can use?
Yeah, did you see any changes on this page?
So there was like a grayed out thing over here, and now it's not grayed, and I can click on it.
And as a visual learner, I love visual indicators.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
When you go back down below into your OK state, what if you've got an open case? Do you want to send something and go look and change the status?
Right. So the question is, whenever you transition back into this OK state, would you want to do something to the open case? There's definitely customers we have that do that. Yeah, so some customers will I actually like doing this. I think that this is the best way to implement IoT, is to let the device tell you that it's healthy, rather than having a service tech, sitting on site basically saying, well, I think I fixed the problem, right? That's more likely to lead to repeated service calls for the same issue, and I think a lot of customers that I've worked with are really going into the model of let the device send an all clear signal, for instance, is what one of the customers I work with does. Yes. Definitely. And they close out all the cases. They have an asset that they update with the current status. They track all the errors. So definitely, I think that that's the best way to do it. Yes.
Yes, so actually, if you see the demos out on the floor for the Lego
Oh,
City.
yeah. Can you repeat the question, Tim?
Oh, sorry. So the question was, what if I don't want to just open a case, but things are getting crazy, and I want to actually manually shut that thing off, right? And so how do I talk to outbound systems right now? And so our solution for that right now, and you can see it on the floor, all the physical devices are actually listening to platform events. And so a platform event is a Salesforce object, but what we can do is we can have Salesforce IoT publish one and have subscribers and or triggers on that platform event that make that HTTP call out if it's an HTTP call out, or if you're just, you can also set up a new subscriber to subscribe from the outside. It's called a Comet D client. To subscribe to those platform events. And so you can have Salesforce IoT publish it and have the consumer pick it up off the queue and take the correct action. And so those are the two common ones.
I also have customers who write Apex classes that make the callouts. So a lot of the times if they already have a private cloud that they've built in AWS, they basically expose some endpoint and they just make a call out with Apex. So they have some class that perhaps triggers upon like case creation maybe, but they'll call the class and then have that class actually make the call out.
Great.
Yeah.
Say my 10 caravans are down as part of my SOW, then I should trigger a support or something?
Yeah, so the question was about aggregations. To what extent can you do aggregations on event fields? So there's definitely aggregations included. You can do counts. So if you want to count up like how many times something has happened. There's also averages, max and min, I think.
Yes, and I think what you're talking about is you're also aggregating across multiple devices, right? And so when you say that, your context is no longer just one device, but it's a account, right? Because you need to look at all the caravans for this particular account. And so at that point is when, I think this is either A, you send in the event here, and then you can associate it with an account using an Apex trigger on the platform event. You can do it at the device management layer, like if you have an AWS partner, there's a lot, but you do need to up-level that context from just a device level to the aggregation level that you want to do the aggregate on.
So I'll ask whether like the data lake actually to organize and derive those inferences for me and then ingest it, right?
Yeah, it's all depending on how the implementation is currently done. We just want to plug in. And so you can do it at the data lake layer, or you can do it at the Salesforce layer, depending where's the data as well, right? Because you don't want to have to make AWS make an additional API call just to get some CRM data. Correct.
So I think I want to rapid fire real quick through just
Yeah,
sending
yeah.
events in, because it seems like everybody gets it. So yeah, go for it while I send this.
Sorry, say it again?
Can you invoke Apex?
Can you invoke it here? Yes. I mean, so here is creating S objects is what our MVP is right now. And the way that we do it for our demos is actually, if you see the Ecolab demo, we have a map that updates. That's actually using an Apex class. And so that map is actually, the update is triggered by a platform event published through here. Because if I have a map component, oftentimes, like when I come to IoT, I'm already using that map component. And so we want to just plug in and not create an additional process that's completely independent of whatever you're already using.
It's like subscribing, making Salesforce itself a subscriber, right?
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's really nice is you can basically use like one, like once you get familiar with platform events, you can just start using that for everything really fluidly. So a lot of people just find that a lot easier to work with. Once they basically get used to it, right, it almost becomes, you can obviously like add to it with Apex. That's a lot of what we're showing tomorrow, but it just becomes a sort of general purpose tool for people to be able to use. All right, so let me see if I can send an event. So we got a success true. I think I clicked the button. It's going through. So basically what will happen over time is you can send events in, and you start seeing instances pop up, right? And eventually we'll also see these cases that we configured showing up too. And I should probably verify that there's not cases in here, unless maybe one came through. All open cases.
And so what we're trying to do here is we're just showing you that the product works. I want to be respectful to the time, though.
Yeah.
And so
we
I
have
hope
2.5 minutes left. I know that we've like dived into questions a little bit.
Right.
I'm wondering if we should just continue doing that.
So yeah, I see 3 paths here. So 1, we can prove that our production product that is live in prod right now works, because we can step through that. 2, we can take questions, or 3, we can just show you the API endpoints that you're interested in. Let's take a poll. 2, raise your hand. API?
API,
Let's
okay.
dive into the API. Sure. I think
Do you want
the
me to-
APIs is the new thing, which Michelle has actually been driving
Do you
as a
want me to
PM.
type since I have a
Yeah,
microphone on my
so-
face?
Sure. So we have APIs now in 2.12 live, and so the easiest way to query them is via Workbench. And so you can just type in services data 42.0 IoT, and you can see all the different sort of first level objects as well as the usage information that is relevant to you. And so she's clicked into Orchestrations, which is the list of orchestrations. So there should be a balloon one, and there should be a caravan one. So you see them.
So you'll see summary views of each of the orchestrations here. So if you want to see like the raw response, you can click show response, and on the side, you can copy this payload. So I personally will usually copy this into a text editor and manipulate it there. But you can also just navigate through in Workbench, which is great if you're just trying to get to the place that you want to go. So to get to the detail for each orchestration, you would click into either this URL. You can also directly just take this ID here in the ID field and copy paste it. That's all the URL is. So you click into that, and then you're able to get a bunch more data about that orchestration. If you want to get information about instances, you can also add it in here. I'm not sure how good the internet is working right now. So you would add in instances, and then you would do 2, 3, 5.
So
I'm not as good at Tim at remembering the number.
The instance is the device.
Yeah,
right?
so how many devices you have. And if you do that, you're able to actually see detailed information about all of the data that's actually been coming into IoT. So it doesn't look like we have any right now.
Okay,
So
well,
I don't think we'll have anything come up there. But once you create that, you can do that.
We forgot to turn on the orchestration. Okay, well, the point is that the APIs allows you a way to sort of see exactly how do we persist definitions, the metadata for an orchestration inside of our system, right? Everything at the end of the day is just metadata, all these definitions, and so you get to see exactly what is the representation that we use, the JSON, so you can understand the underlying data model. And this is something that will be persisted from release to release.
Okay, so our event came through. Sorry, I hadn't activated it. So you're able to actually see the instance in the UI. If you want to get more detail about what information is being stored in that instance, we don't have a very complex instance. It's basically saving a state right now, but you can query that directly. Like, let's say that you have a service customer who basically says, like, my caravan isn't working and I don't know why. Well, if you want to figure out what state it's in the orchestration directly, it's really easy to just go look in here. So let me show you this full URL so you can see it there. But I've actually gone into the instances of the orchestration. I've put in the key. So it's basically orchestrations, the ID of the orchestration, instances, and then the instance key. That's, again, always going to be a serial number, something that either you or the customer has access to, so you can always get this. And you can go into stuff like this, where you can see the label of the state that it's in. You can also add variables to these orchestrations. So a lot of people doing counts will put those counts in variables, and you would be able to click, if we had configured variables, there would be stuff in this folder, and you would see all of those values, which can be really helpful with debugging. And obviously, something that we want to do in the future is build beautiful UI around this too. But for now, if you want to be a power user and blow people in your organization away with all the extra stuff you can get from IoT, this is a great way to get through it. Yes? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, can you dynamically adjust orchestration rules for the API? So there's basically a draft copy of the orchestration and an activated one. What you would do is you go into orchestrations. First time you create anything in REST, it's always a post, and then you use puts to update. So I would go, oh, sorry, I deleted too much. Let me go here. So you would go into this guy. I'm just going to get it first. I'll show you how I do it. Sorry, I typed something wrong.
While you're setting that up, I think another question you're sort of alluding to is, can I just maybe plug and play some Apex into here maybe as an output? Is that something that you're thinking?
It was more so like
there we go.
how you can use Einstein to start to predict when problems actually occur at what temperature maybe the caravan is overheating at.
Right.
So you pull that in cases are created for temperatures at 200 often.
Mm-hmm.
Now we want to set our orchestration to that. Maybe if you get to the point where you can let that happen automatically.
I think that is something. So I will say in this release, we don't have that functionality even at the API level. There will be validation that just throws that out because the IoT piece of it doesn't, the functionality isn't there in this release.
well, you can.
to integrate with.
Yeah, so it's not going to be directly integrated with Einstein. The question is basically, could you use Einstein to predict the thresholds in the rules that you put in, like that 250, right? So we actually have an SE. He's very active on Twitter. His name is Charlie Isaacs, if you guys want to look him up. And I don't know if he posted this video on Twitter, but he sent it internally. He was at a hackathon and put together something that auto-generated an orchestration. I don't think that he had it change afterwards, but basically what he did, so if you want to create an orchestration, you post it to just orchestrations. You don't include this, the ID, because you're creating a new one. If you want to update one, you select put. You use the actual ID. Put, remember, replaces the entire resource. So what I do is I get the raw response, and then I basically put this in my text editor, go edit it, and then put it back. I use Workbench because I'm too lazy to set up a connected app, but people who are doing this in production usually set up connected apps and have a whole workflow. Since I'm just messing around on orgs that get refreshed recently with the most recent code line, I don't go to the trouble of doing that. I actually don't know. The customers I have using it, I'm not sure whether they're doing it via Workbench or via a real connected app. So.
Or Mailman. But that was a
they might
that was the second level thought right there. But yeah.
So we're running a couple minutes over. I want to be respectful of the next people in the room. We will stick around and be here to answer questions. We'll probably get kicked out into the hallway at some point. But thank you guys so much. I should probably go back to the slides and we can show our lovely thank you slide. Thank you so much for being here and for participating and asking questions. Great.